Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's so great to see you. I am noticing that a lot of you are joining in with that link, and so your name is listed as test test. Feel free if you want to keep it that way, that's totally cool, but you can just click on your name there and then switch it out. But my name is Becca Andrade, and I'm the Engagement Outreach Manager here at Fly 5, and I'm tonight's host. But we are joined by some lovely Fly 5 ambassadors. As Sam shared, they are current teachers in the classroom who are implementing Fly 5. And so I'll pass the mic to Diana to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Pessin, and I currently work as a fourth grade teacher at a school in West Hollywood, California. I've been teaching for about 17 years, working with Fly 5 for about 3, and very excited to share any tips and tricks about using Fly 5 during the day in the classroom. So welcome.
And I'm Linda Berger. I'm a kindergarten teacher in Santa Clara, California. And like Diana, we are all engaged in Fly 5 for about 3 years. And the exciting thing is, as it grows, so do we. So we're excited to share our ideas.
Thank you so much. And as we start looking at our workshop norms, we're super excited to really have a focused conversation with Linda and Diana about their experiences and how that might support you in your classrooms. But before we move forward, please in the chat, we'd love to see who else is here with us. So if you want to share your location, so where you're coming from, your role, and then just what brought you here today, feel free to share that in the chat. Again, your role, where you're located, and what's bringing you here today. And as you all are doing that in the chat, we just wanted to put our workshop norms up on the screen. This is a reminder that this is really a collaborative learning space. And so we're all coming to this space tonight from different places, different contexts, different experiences. And so we want to leverage that and really, come together and just learn from each other and hopefully walk away with some strategies and inspiration for things we can do in our settings in the coming weeks. Hi, Megan. So happy you're here. Okay, and so let's see. Hi, Elizabeth. Nice. We have some third grade and fourth grade representation. Hi, Christina. Nice. Massachusetts representation. Amazing. Hi, Courtney. Awesome. Some middle school. Nice. We have a nice range here tonight. So it's going to be great to really hear about the different experiences you all are having. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And so our agenda today, you can see the 3 things that we will be focusing on. And again, as Sam sort of grounded us, it's really just about thinking how can social emotional learning really be embedded throughout the day and really support students in all areas of their lives, not just in that SEL class or, part of the schedule, but in the other academic areas, even how to support their families and parents in understanding their student better. And so we'll look at how the C.A.R.E.S competencies can support you with that. And yeah. We'll go from there. Thank you, Sam. So on this slide, you will see the 5 competencies or C.A.R.E.S: cooperation, assertiveness, responsibility, empathy, and self-control. And then you also see underneath each one different ways that each competency can impact student achievement, academic achievement. And so take a moment to read through the different impacts that C.A.R.E.S can have. And as you do that, take a moment to think about, is there something that surprises you? Or maybe something that really resonates with you? Or maybe something that you're feeling drawn to because maybe it's related to something that's currently happening in your classroom or your school community. And as you're doing that, again, we invite you to, interact in the chat and share that one noticing. What's the one thing from this slide that's standing out to you? Or that's really resonating with you right now? Maybe something that's really kind of sitting close to your heart because you see that happening with your students. So feel free to take a moment and share in the chat. Just any way that these competencies are having an impact on your students. And so while we give you a chance to share, again, we just want to reinforce that the way Fly 5 was developed was really not just to be explicitly taught during that, instruction time that's dedicated to SEL, but also the lessons were designed, the C.A.R.E.S standards were designed to be embedded throughout the day and really support students in all areas of their lives. And so that was, part of the design. And so we're hoping that throughout tonight's workshop, you can start to make those connections within your context. Nice, so self-control is a big focus. Yeah, especially right now, heading into the holiday season, it's kind of getting, the end of the semester. Self-control and empathy for others. Yeah, there's a lot of feelings at this time of year. I feel across the board, not just kids, but adults as well. Awesome. Yeah, and again, feel free to continue contributing in the chat about different things that are standing out to you or that are really resonating with you. And so knowing that C.A.R.E.S really does have an impact on students' academic achievement, we're going to get to really the nitty-gritty. What does it actually look like in the classroom? What are things that you can do tomorrow with your kids, with your families, with your parents to help students, really stay on that path towards success? So in the chat, Sam has shared our SEL standards. And so if you go to that link, you'll be able to click, there's like 3 buttons on the left-hand side, and you can pick a grade that, makes sense for you. And you'll see all the standards and skills for that grade throughout C.A.R.E.S. What we're going to do now is we're going to switch to a Jamboard. And on this Jamboard, both Diana and Linda have contributed different examples of ways that they have embedded C.A.R.E.S throughout the school day. And so Linda and Diana, I'm really going to turn it to you all to just drive this conversation. And if you all want to, maybe you want to focus more on language arts or science, or there's an example that you really want to share tonight, we have about like 8 minutes for this part of the workshop. So whatever you're excited to share first, we can start from there and see where it takes us.
If you want to contribute to the Jamboree board, I'm going to drop this in the link. And over here you have tools. It's very simple. You can just add a sticky note and it'll drop right in there, and it might rearrange a few things, but it's not going to, you're not going to have to move it. So if you want to add anything, feel free to add something. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Linda and Diana.
When I started reflecting on how to drop Fly 5 and the social emotional skills into the day, I thought about how easy it is. We all do like a read aloud, for example, or even in middle school, there's always reading content. So be thinking about how these characters can be used to the best advantage in terms of social emotional. There's always expected questions that we have to follow, or curriculum that guides us. And at the same time, this is a flexible piece that can be integrated in really effortless ways at a multitude of times in the day or the school year.
I completely agree, Linda. And language arts is a really natural place to introduce SEL concepts. And again, like you said, use the characters. I mean, we did a whole character trait study in my 4th grade class, and they made character maps of all of the characters, and they did Venn diagrams comparing and contrasting. So depending on the age group, they can do picture Venn diagrams, and then moving up, they can use those to write sentences, descriptive sentences, comparing them, and then even go beyond that and go into paragraph writing if for older students. Compare contrast is a really great one. We use problem solution, being able to figure out how to help these characters through the demands of their day, which I think really gets a lot of buy-in from my students, because they like to help the characters, with solve their problems. So that kind of naturally ties in to our language arts program.
Right. While we're transitioning, I want to, I saw Megan's comment in the chat about self-control. Last year, I was sharing with Becca that my class had this very challenge with self-control, the kindergarten, right? So I literally went through that module 3 times. And at the same time, realized part of self-control is taking turns. Taking turns can be partner reading. Partner reading ends up being part of ELA and literacy. So you see how things will really build on each other and really elevate both sets of learning.
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true. In math as well, we have a lot of partner work, right? I mean, so much of math is not sitting by themselves, but is working with another person and being able to cooperate in small groups and one-on-one groups with somebody they might not have chosen as their partner, how to deal with that, how to deal with, getting frustrated with each other and then frustrated with math because that's a big time of frustration, and we want them to feel that to an extent because that's
Mhm.
part of learning and growing. But how do they deal with that? How do they maintain composure when it's really challenging for
Right.
them? How do they persevere?
Right. I can't remember which expert. I want to say Zaretta Hammond calls it productive struggle. So yes, math, rather than being a checkbox correct answer, we want to give them the opportunity for productive struggle because it's a life skill. So when we think about integrating social emotional learning, we often consult them. They are the experts of their own learning. We're the facilitators. So we end up asking them, oh, we have to practice skip counting. What number should we come with? It creates the buy-in, it gives them the agency, but at the same time, it creates that collaboration and that empathy. When things go wrong, how can they rise up and support each other? Because they're that community that we took the time to establish.
Something I'm hearing you all say a lot is the vocabulary, right? The language that's
Mhm.
behind all of that. And so, really leaning into the vocabulary that you might find within 5.5 to then support those different ways of working, right? And learning in those areas.
Yeah.
And I think if we go back to math real quick, I was super curious about, there were two things on there that sounded really fun and interesting, but graphing favorite characters and activities like pop. I don't know if you all wanted to talk a little bit about those and just, how C.A.R.E.S made their way into that and then also supported your students' math learning.
So just quickly, I'll share the graphing favorite characters actually came from my students. We were doing a graphing unit, and they could choose anything they wanted to find data on and survey everyone and to create a graph. And a couple of my students chose who's your favorite Fly 5 character, and they went around asking, and it came up organically from them. And I just thought it was so lovely, like that they were into the graphing unit and then into Fly 5 and completely connected and integrated them without my input at all. So that came up naturally.
And POP is a way that we integrate these activities and the social emotional learning into the morning meetings, because the activity might be skip counting. So we'll go around the circle and it'll be 1, 2, 3, pop. So every multiple of 4 becomes not the number but the pop. So we end up, you really have to focus on each student. So we develop that self-control because they're waiting for their turn. So this is where something like turn taking comes in. But at the same time, what number should we do today? Okay, great. We need to work on that. So it'll be multiples of 5, 5, 10, 15, pop. And it ends up being something that really belonging, significance, and fun are the elements of responsive classroom. And when we can combine those with an activity that develops the most social emotional learning as well in something like math, it's just it's a gift to all of us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and then social studies, lots of ideas here. So anything that you want to emphasize or reinforce?
I really love the idea, Becca, that you brought out, just simple vocabulary. Think about how we can say, how do you practice empathy when we're talking to our custodian and asking him for help? We're connecting that with the community, the vocabulary, and the social emotional skills that end up being planting seeds in them and becoming really amazing gradual release of responsibility when we see them practicing it with each other.
Yeah, and in 4th grade right now, we're learning about various Native American cultures, and they're working in small groups and they have to collaborate a lot. They had to come up, read a bunch of information, take notes, and then they're creating a slideshow together in a group of 4 or 5 students, and that's not easy to do. You have to really work together, and we spend a lot of time before they go off to work, less on the content and more on how are we going to collaborate with each other, how will we communicate, how can we make sure all voices feel heard. So a lot of our conversations revolve more around how are you going to work together as a team and really build that team feeling and make sure that if something doesn't feel right, that you can assert yourself and say that, and that you all have a role to play and nobody feels like they don't have a role in the group. So a lot of group projects really revolve around those discussions.
Right. And imagine, Diana, how powerful assertiveness is. And they learn the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness. No, you get to speak your ideas, because your ideas are just as valuable as anyone else. So that's a skill that is easily overlooked and becomes more and more valuable as they get older.
And then specialist areas. So then in other areas of the school, it'd be interesting to hear. I see that you'll have some examples here, but you have how maybe you've collaborated with specialist teachers, or ways that you see those C.A.R.E.S competencies really just kind of naturally get embedded throughout.
I mean,
Something like sorry, go ahead,
go ahead,
Diana.
Linda. Go ahead.
I was thinking about how PE teachers will always say, well, sportsmanship is more important. As soon as you break down something like sportsmanship, think of those C.A.R.E.S competencies and how cooperation, yep. Assertiveness, yep. Responsibility, absolutely. Empathy, thinking about your team. Self-control, 100%. I think that we underuse the ideas that these C.A.R.E.S competencies are everywhere, especially when we're in something like PE.
Yeah, they're so useful and so needed, right? PE is such an open time, and that's the time you hear about a lot of conflicts happening. They're getting really competitive. And what is healthy competition? What does that look like? You know, that's so important. A lot of our specialists have asked for our vocabulary so that they can keep up with what we're teaching. And so they see the vocabulary for fourth grade. They can see all of the vocabulary words that we're using so that they can use that same language. And that language is so powerful. The more we use it, the more we hear the students using it as well. So, I mean, I have it, you know, I have like some doors, and I have one has a cooperation word wall, and I have an assertiveness word wall. I have the whole C.A.R.E.S word wall. And so as we learn new vocabulary words, we put them up so that the students can access them and use them frequently. And so as well, so can specialist teachers, if they come in, they see what we're working on.
That's awesome. Yeah, just again, access to that language, right? And then speaking of access to that language, a really important piece is that connection to the home, right? Making sure that learning continues, because as we know, SEL takes place, as you all are emphasizing, it's everywhere. And so what is maybe a highlight that you would like to share out about how to bring in C.A.R.E.S with parent communication and family communication?
Well, I think our parents really do appreciate the school to home connection letters. I had parent conferences recently, and a lot of them were bringing up like, oh, that was so helpful. We didn't really know what to talk about or how to address, you know, certain topics in the house. And, you know, they always talk about how bedtime is when really big feelings come up, and how helpful it was to have bedtime discussions, to be able to use that and have the proper language to talk about it with their child. And I think just we forget that as adults, it's really important that we're modeling that behavior, that we're modeling reflecting on ourselves and being able to admit and open up when a mistake is made and share how we handled it, right? You know, a lot of times children don't realize that we go through that as well. They think, oh, you just know how to do everything. And so being able to model the mistakes and, you know, struggles that you have with your own friends, and parents have really felt better about realizing like, oh, I can be a little bit more open, and I can show them lessons that I've learned about that. So I think that's been really useful for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, just having that paper, right, and some direction, right, and language and kind of guidance on where to go with that, because that can be pretty daunting, those conversations too. For sure. Let's see. Oh, Linda, I think you're muted.
I want to build on what Diana said as we transition. When we send those newsletters home, it shows their students that are their children, our students, that they're learners too. And that modeling of the learning piece and the empathy of understanding that builds on it. And I was recommending to a parent recently, because we had conferences as well. I call them car talks. I go, bedtime stories, great time to talk about that. Car talks, it's less frightening when you integrate those conversations parallel, rather than sitting down and be intentional about it. It's just as valuable and just as enriching.
Absolutely. And it's kind of just a nice invitation into those conversations, right? It's already a part of your day. And so building it in. Thank you so much for sharing both of those examples. And so as we head into the kind of the closing of the workshop, we are going to pop into a breakout room. It'll be a little bit brief, so about 4 minutes. But really a chance for you all to connect as you know, other Fly 5 and SEL educators, and you'll be in a room with an ambassador and a Fly 5 team member. So as you were listening tonight and kind of thinking about your own students, your own school community, what's a competency that you are really thinking about what your students would benefit from even just tomorrow? And how might that support their learning? So when we go off into the breakout room, we invite you to share that competency and how you see it supporting your students' learning. And then maybe any examples that you're thinking of trying or that you have tried in order to do that. So we'll head off into those breakout rooms for about 3 minutes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I think we're all back in here. But yeah, thank you for taking part in that breakout room. We hope that you had some good conversation, just inspiration, or even I know in our breakout room, there was a lot of just encouragement and I think validation of the important work that you all are doing. So thank you for participating in that. And with that, we'll head into our closing and just, thinking about the C.A.R.E.S competencies and your context and your setting and really the realities that you're faced with and that your students are facing. How can these different competencies be woven throughout the day and different elements of the Fly 5 program and curriculum? How can you use those to support your students and you in your practice in different parts of the day? And so Sam just dropped in the chat an article that is called Navigating Daily Routines with Fly 5, and it has a lot of ideas, resources, and links for things that you could do with your students or your school communities tomorrow. So make sure to check that out and see how that might help you. And then there's also a PDF in the chat of just a planner to kind of help you think about, all the things that you're holding. How can Fly 5 come in to support all of those, all of the really incredible work that you're doing? So feel free to check those out. And then before we head out, we just want to emphasize we are here to help. We have office hours. We'd love to meet and chat. If there's anything you want to ask a little bit more about, you can scan that QR code. Here are different email addresses that you can reach out to. So feel free to screenshot this. We'll also follow up with it.